Welcome into Hawk Talk on Melrose. Thank you for tuning in. I am Collin, joined today with Tyler. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go over the 2025 schedule, but we're not going to go game by game. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that there's been other podcasts that have done that. I support Legends and Listeners, Chad Leitstico and Scott Docterman. They do a really good job, and they already kind of went through the schedule where they did game by game. And Scott, obviously a national reporter for The Athletic, covering college football. He knows ins and outs. He knows every team, transfer portal, things like that. So they did a really good job of going game by game. And so what we're going to do is kind of make a little twist to it and kind of kill two birds with one stone, where we're going to go over the schedule, but we're going to do it in a way where we're going to do superlatives, where we have questions like, what's the toughest game of the schedule? What game is the most important game of the schedule, right? And the goal is we'll kind of go through every team by doing these questions. So we'll have 10 questions that we will do. We'll just go from there. So that's how we're going to do it on this episode. We just wanted to do kind of a deep dive into the schedule, but we didn't want to do it where it was just like, all right, Tyler, Albany. Okay, here's stuff about Albany. All right, yeah. Iowa State. I think the first thing I think of with this schedule and how it's really tough. No longer the Big Ten West. And I think I told you this a couple years ago on an episode where, it's going to be way more difficult. And no doubt about it, with the new Big Ten, with the expansion, with 18 teams, no divisions. But I do think it's going to be more fun, though. Like, let's be honest with ourselves. It was getting to the point where playing the Big Ten West every single year, the Northwesterns of the world, Purdue, Illinois. I know Illinois is good, or like better now, but those years they weren't. It just got a little boring. Like every single year you saw the same teams inside Kinnick. We finally now get to see some new teams. And even though it's a tough schedule for 2025, I think there's a lot of opportunity, number one, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun being able to compete against some of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt like back, it was a lose-lose, right? Because it's like, man, a lot of these Big Ten West teams you're supposed to beat. And then if you don't, it's kind of like, oh my God. And even if you do, it's like, well, Iowa had the easiest schedule. Iowa always has an easy schedule. Yep. And I mean, I can't defend that because we did, right? Most years when you're playing in the Big Ten West, those are no longer a given, right? Going forward. And so now to say that we can host the Oregon Ducks, I mean, dude, this is what we've been waiting for. Like, I never thought it'd be a possible.
Yeah.
Now that it is, it's like, dude, there's games on this home schedule alone is incredible.
All right, before we do the questions, I do have kind of a rundown of some different facts about this schedule. So we'll kick off with the 2025 season with Albany. Originally, this game was actually supposed to be Florida Atlantic, but that game got moved to 2030. So we brought in FCS opponent in Albany. Assuming we beat Albany, a win at Iowa State would mark 206 wins for Kirk Ferentz. That would surpass Woody Hayes for the most wins in Big Ten history. So that game, as long as we beat Albany, is going to have, it's already a big game against Iowa State, but it's going to be even more implications with that. Most wins in Big Ten history if we can beat Iowa State. This will be the first time we ever played UMass, who is now actually in the MAC. We kick off the Big Ten slate on the road, and we're kind of familiar with that because that's been 3 straight years of starting the Big Ten on the road. And if you look at the last 6 years, 4 out of the last 6 years, we have started on the road in the Big Ten. We are 4-2 in Big Ten openers since 2018. We do have 5 home Big Ten games and 4 road Big Ten games. We face 3 college football playoff teams inside Kinnick Stadium. I think a lot of people probably already know that. Indiana, Penn State, Oregon. We go over a month this year without playing on the road. 35 days exactly. October 11th against Wisconsin. And then we don't play on the road again until November 15th at USC. We have no back-to-back road games. I do think the bye weeks are in pretty good spots. You get 5 games, get a bye week, and then you get 3 games in October, 3 really big games, 2 rivalry games, and then Penn State. And then you get another bye week where there's, you're going into like the crucial month of November. So those are some facts about the schedule. All right, let's get into the 10 questions, and we'll go back and forth here. I'll start. What is the easiest win on the schedule? We'll make it easy for this first one.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, you mentioned them already. I think it's Albany. I mean, they're an FCS opponent, like you mentioned. A game that, we shouldn't have any tough time with, and a game that I think it's a good warm-up game for Mark Gronowski. kind of get his, feet wet and get him in a nice rhythm going forward with this offense. And, the rest of the year, hopefully by the fourth quarter, it's a game where we see a lot of backups in. So,
yeah, Albany, they went 4-8 last year, and then their starting quarterback in the spring had an injury, and so now he's out for next year. So they are not a very good football team. And then I'm just going to bring up UMass because I'm sure we probably will not bring up UMass again, because if you talk easiest, I would say Albany as well, but UMass would be the next one. They went 2-10 last year, historically just not a very good program. They did bring in Rutgers defensive coordinator from last year as their new head coach. They got a bunch of new transfers. The one thing I will say about this game, though, is it always seems like win or lose against Iowa State, this game 3 is kind of like a sleepy game, and we always start off not very good. Go back to last year, we were down 14-10 at half against Troy. 2023, we were only up 14-10 against Western Michigan at half. 2021, we were down 14-7 at half against Colorado State. It's just a really weird game. It's positioned in between the Iowa State game and then the start of the Big Ten slate. And I just feel like we always start off kind of slow. And so that's just something to monitor. Obviously, we should have no business losing this game, but something to monitor. So, all right, well, you can go next for the next question.
Yeah, Colin. In terms of the rivalry games, I'm going to have you rank them easiest on the schedule to hardest. So, of our 4 rivalry games, what do you got?
So I'm going to go Minnesota at 4 just because it's a home game.
So easiest.
Yep, that's in my opinion, probably the easiest. And then I'm going to go at Wisconsin on the road. Wisconsin's kind of a tricky team to figure out because I do think they'll be better next year, but man, their schedule, and we'll probably talk about their schedule in a couple months when we go over the Big Ten preview. It is like, let's just say if Iowa had that schedule, I would just be like, let's just get to 2026, right?
Yep.
Very hard. And then I would say at Nebraska at 3. This game, after last year and now with Matt Rule there, and that their program's on the rise, like I think this can be a legit like rivalry game every single year where there's a lot of tension. And you kind of saw that last year, the no handshakes, things like that.
Mm-hmm. That's
gonna be a really tough game. And I guess you could say with Wisconsin too, they're doing 42 push-ups now because they can't stand that we beat them last year. And then number 1, Iowa State, because of they are a good team led by Rocco Becht. Yeah, they lost their wide receivers, but you look at their trend the last decade, they have no problem getting new wide receivers in there. They have a good stable of running backs. Defense is always going to be decent under John Heacock. So, and it's on the road. Even though we've won there a lot, still being on the road, it's going to be tough. So that's how I would go. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Iowa State.
And the reason I'm sort of smiling is because I have the exact same. Exact same order as you. Easiest to hardest, Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Which it makes
Nebraska,
sense. I mean,
State. And it's more recency bias, right? Wisconsin's not as good. Nebraska seems to be trending in the right direction, like you mentioned, and that's why, years past I would have them flipped around. We beat Nebraska every year, right? It seems like, knock on wood. Given, like you said, the new kind of rivalry with Matt Rule and just the fact that, man, he's definitely improving that team, and there were a lot of games that they probably should have won last year that they didn't. So. And then Iowa State, 50-50 game every year. It doesn't matter the records. Throw the records out. Throw the stats out. Any team can win that on that given day. So not much more to say than that.
What is the toughest game on the schedule?
So the toughest game on the schedule that I personally think it's going to be Penn State. The reason I have Penn State is because I believe they're sort of on the trajectory of kind of like what Ohio State was doing last year. I feel like they're all in. A lot of guys came back. Drew Aller, quarterback, very experienced guy. The running backs, both back, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. They upgraded wide receiver in the portal, which I thought they had to because last year it was basically the Tyler Warren show or nothing. And I think that's what cost them.
Not to cut you off there, but did you see that they just brought in, and that's maybe what you're referencing, they just brought in like the Syracuse wide receiver, like one of their top guys.
Wide receiver. Yep. So, and then the biggest thing that I think nobody's talking about is Ohio State's D coordinator is now Penn State's D coordinator.
I totally forgot about that.
Which Jim Knowles, one of the best to do it. And so kind of a shocking sort of offseason storyline when it happened. So they're going all in. I mean, I know they lost the edge player from Penn State. I'm blanking on his name
Carter,
off the top of my
yeah.
head. Yeah. Yep. Abdul Carter. But man, their defense is going to be so good again. There, it always is with Jim
Yeah.
Knowles, especially. So similar vibes to Ohio State in a way last year. I mean, I feel like they're really going all in because Ohio State lost. You saw all the talent that they lost last year too. So I feel like they think that they could beat them, and they made the playoffs last year. So that's why it's between Oregon and Penn State. I think between you and I don't think it's any shock, but I went with Penn State.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be different here. There's no right or wrong answer. I was going to say Oregon just because they're obviously really, and so is Penn State, obviously, very talented. I think Oregon's just, when you look at both teams, Penn State might be better, but I think Oregon's just more talented. And when it comes to like Iowa, I just feel like we struggle when we play a really, really talented team. And with Penn State, we've played them now a few times. We kind of know what you kind of have with James Franklin and his teams. Yeah, this might be the best Penn State team that we will face. But Oregon, we've never played. Like, it's been since 1989 since we've played them. And I think they won like 45-0 that day. So Oregon's just so talented. And I don't know, they're coming off a bye.
They're probably have better athletes.
But
yep.
It's a coin flip between both of those. Similar, like, what's the easiest game on the schedule?
Yeah. And I think for me, the thing that I looked at too, real quick, is, Oregon's last two quarterbacks. I mean, Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix, right? Ton of experience at quarterback. Now they're bringing in the guy, I think, from UCLA. I can't remember his name either. But he, I think, is going to be the starter. Really 5-star guy, obviously talented, but not a lot of actual experience. And so I wonder, that experience factor in Kinnick might lend itself towards Penn State over Oregon. But, dude, Oregon's, that's going to be such a hard game. So next up, what is the most important game on the the And this is kind of a tough question because you could say, man, any game.
Any game is important. Yeah.
What do you got?
I'm going to go Indiana because as long as we take care of business against Rutgers, obviously that Iowa State game is big, but at the end of the day, when you talk Big Ten, you want to you want to win the Big Ten games. And that Indiana game sets us up for the remaining of the season. You think about it, it's the first playoff game or first playoff team to come to Kinnick in the season with Indiana. It's right before a bye week. And if you could get into that bye week, 5-1 or undefeated, and you're coming off a huge game against Indiana, because the thing is everybody's kind of down in Indiana, like, oh, that was just a one-year wonder. But I think that they are going to be still really good this year. They lose Curtis Rourke, but they bring in the guy from Cal. They still have a really good wide receiver who might be one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten. And then he brings back 3 of their best defenders from last year. So this Indiana team is good. Like I said, people are just kind of shutting them out a little bit, and I don't agree with that. So I think this game might be the most important game because it sets us up for the remaining of the season, if you think about it, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a great way to look at it. I did at Wisconsin, and the reason I said that is because it's a game I feel like we should win because I don't think this is the same Wisconsin team, right? Since Luke Fickell took over, what's always been the story? He hasn't really found a quarterback. They don't really have an identity. It's a team I think we should beat, but man, it's still at Wisconsin. It's in Camp Randall, a place we've struggled with historically, and it's not going to be an easy game. And I think if we can't, win that game, it's you rest of the season, you kind of say to yourself like, man, is it going to be a struggle every game? And so because there's no gimmies, right? And so even Wisconsin, I think, is one of probably the easier games in terms of the Big Ten teams that we play this year, an easier game, but it's still going to be very tough, and that's why I think it's the most important, because if you can't win that one, man, it's going to be tough sledding the rest of the way.
Yep, exactly. Road game we are most nervous about.
After looking at it, I went with at USC because it's on the West Coast, and we, as Iowa fans know, when we travel to the West Coast, historically, we don't play very well. The only time I think we played well is actually against USC in the Holiday Bowl back in, 2019, where Amir Smith-Marset had the game of his life.
That game was awesome.
Great game.
It was like Brian Ferentz was our offensive coordinator that day. Didn't seem like it.
Yeah. That was maybe the only time I've enjoyed playing on the West Coast. You've got the Rose Bowl against Stanford, name them, UCLA last year, right? Like, we just don't play well. And it's a game that I think again, kind of USC. What are they? Who are they? I feel like they had a down year last year, but man, that they're going to be a decent team.
They're gonna be decent.
They've got athletes. They've got high star, high, high recruits on that team, big recruits on that team, and it's still Lincoln Riley with that offense.
Yep.
It's going to be a tricky game.
It's going to be interesting to see who their quarterback will be by the time we get to them, right? Because they lose Moss last year and they bring in this other guy, and he did pretty good last year. But I've been reading like they have some other guys in the quarterback room too, where if this guy kind of struggles out of the gate, will there be a little bit of a quarterback competition? So it'll be interesting to see. I got Iowa State just because after losing to them last year, you don't want to lose 2 years in a row against Iowa State. And right now, I think both programs are, doing fine, but it does seem like Iowa State has a lot of momentum right now, right? They're coming off an 11-win season. They're coming off going to the Big 12 championship. They're sending, really good players to the NFL. You just saw Brock Purdy get paid. Like they just have a lot of momentum as a program, and you don't want to lose to them again. Like you want to be able to establish yourself that, hey, we're still the guys in the state. And how do you do that? You go on the road and you beat them. And it's a really big game for us. I said this last year where I think this game means more for us now than Iowa State. And what I mean by that is because they play in a league where if they lose against Iowa, that's fine. They can run the table in the Big 12. It's a lot more even. I'm not talking shit about the Big 12. I'm just saying it's a lot more even. Teams are not, you're not facing Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. You're facing guys that are teams that are similar in competition. And so they have a way easier path to get to the playoffs. We don't. Like, you have to, for us, it's more at large. Like, we're probably not going to be the top two teams in the Big Ten to go to the Big Ten championship and win that game and go to the playoffs. No, our only option, essentially, most years is an at-large bid. Well, how do you get there? You got to beat your teams that you face on the schedule, and that starts week 2 against Iowa State. So that is why, for me, that game I'm most nervous about. It's going to be really interesting to see Iowa State, who has more of an advantage here. Iowa State coming off of having to play in Dublin against Kansas State, huge test. You can't just, we're going to keep it, where we're not going to open up the playbook against them. No, you out of the gates, you got to be who you are. And then you don't get a bye week like most teams do. You have to get right back on a plane, travel back overseas, and then you play South Dakota, who's a decent FCS program, and then you get Iowa. For us, we just play Albany, but you could say, well, we're not going to be tested like they do, but maybe by time they play us, there might be a little banged up
the rest versus rust kind of debate there a little bit. Right?
Exactly. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how all that shakes out. I believe, though, Iowa State, when you look at the Big 12, there's a lot of teams in front of them in terms of, winning the Big 12 championship. I think Iowa State has every opportunity to go back again. I mean, when you talk just like culture and stability with Matt Campbell, Rocco Beck, they're going to be good again. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Kind of moving on here, Colin, when you look at the schedule, what is the game that we are most likely to overlook?
I'm going to go USC. And the reason why is because when you look at the schedule, we always think, oh my God, we play Indiana. Oh, we play at Iowa State. Oh, we play Penn State. We play Oregon. We forget, oh my gosh, we also have to play at USC. We kind of forget about that game a little bit.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You just brought up USC. I mean, it's going to be tough. They're going to be better than they were last year. I kind of wish we played them last year, frankly. And then just going on the road, going out west, teams, I mean, we went 0-1, but Big Ten teams went 8-19 last year, traveling 2 or more time zones. It's something we got to figure out because every year you're going to play a team out on the West Coast. Got to figure it out sometime. So either that game or the game after that game, and that's Michigan State at home, just because, once again, we're thinking about all these other games, and it's like, oh, yeah, Michigan State, we get at home. They're not a bad team either. I mean, I think everyone kind of chalks that up as a dub, but go back to last year, I wouldn't say manhandled us, because if you look at the score, we only lost by 7 or 8 points, but if you watch that game, we could not do anything. And they kind of ran all over us. Aiden Childs
scrimmage
just looked so much better, and we just looked awful. And so that's a game you can't really overlook, but I feel like we kind of do a little bit because we don't really think about that game. We just think about all the other games.
Yep. I went with Michigan State there as well, Colin, just for basically the same reasons you said. all the other tough teams on the schedule that we're sort of focused on. They're kind of sitting there, you put, like you said, you play at USC, and then it's sandwiched in between
Yep.
USC and Nebraska. So you're kind of focused on those games, and you forget, oh, little old Michigan State, who actually beat us last year, is coming to town. So
Yep, exactly.
and then the Aiden Childs factor. I mean, he's very inconsistent, but of course the one game he was consistent was against us, right? And he looked like unstoppable. So
And they have a
yeah.
stud wide receiver too. I forgot what his name is, but Nick Marsh, I think
Marsh,
maybe.
yep, Nick
Yeah,
Marsh.
he's
Yep, you're
pretty
right.
damn good. So I mean, yeah, it's gonna be still a tough game, especially after playing Oregon at USC. Then you got Nebraska
Yeah.
the week after that, sandwiched in between two tough games. What game could define the season?
Yeah, so this is a good question, actually. I actually picked Indiana, so
Okay.
kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier with when you brought up Indiana. It's like when you look back and you say, "Man, Iowa had a really successful season." I think it probably starts with beating one of the three teams that made the playoffs last year, and I
Yep.
think the most likely of the three is Indiana. And you could say the reverse. Man, Iowa had a kind of a tough season. What when you look back, where did it kind of go wrong? And it could be Indiana. Were we not being able to be very competitive against them, or were we? And if we're not, like you said, it only gets tougher after Indiana. So of the three top teams that we play, Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State. So I feel like it's a game it's such a big game. It's at home, and I feel like, man, if you win that game, it sort of propels you and gives you momentum against some of the other top dogs that we play.
So I'm going to go Penn State, and who knows what our record will be going into that Penn State game. It could be, we could have 2 losses by then. We could have only 1 loss by then. But if you think about it, that Penn State game, man, can you imagine if we somehow do beat them, regardless of what our record is? Number one, they're more than likely, if you look at their schedule, they're probably only going to have either 0 losses or 1 loss. They play Oregon before they play us. They're going to be still a top 10 team coming into Kinnick, more than likely on October 18th or whenever that game is. And you think about it, like you somehow beat them. Oh, hey, by the way, we still have Oregon in a couple weeks where we could do the same thing again. So that's where it's like, man, if you somehow could beat Penn State, I think that could define the rest of the schedule, regardless of what our record is there. Obviously, my hope is we go into Penn State where we only have like 1 or 2 losses. I mean, obviously, I hope we're undefeated, but realistically, 1 or 2 losses. And then you win that game, and it feels like, okay, we can get something going here now. We play Minnesota next week, and then we get a bye, then we get Oregon. We can hopefully maybe do the same thing where we can rush the field again.
Yeah.
And so that's where, for me, it's like if you somehow beat Penn State, I think it can make the rest of the season momentum-wise really good.
What's the most underrated matchup on the schedule this year?
Minnesota, similar to what we just talked about with USC, Michigan State, where we talk about all these other games, and it's like, well, this is still a really big game inside Kinnick. Like when you talk our home slate, it's really easy to just bring up Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon, but the last few years has shown how good of a game this is. And just go back 2 years ago with Cooper Jean, like all the drama and everything. I mean, this is a legit rivalry game, and Minnesota hates us. I think for us, we have more rivals. So, I mean, I don't like Minnesota either, but when you factor Iowa State, Nebraska, Wisconsin, it's sometimes you kind of overlook Minnesota. Minnesota just absolutely hates us. And so this is just a huge game. And this could be one of those games too, where, we're hoping for night games for like the Penn State Oregon game, and we'll probably won't get them, but then this game will randomly be a night game, and it's a blackout game. So it's still like a huge game inside Kinnick.
So originally I actually had Minnesota, and I kind of thought to myself, and I, for those same reasons, really. And I thought to myself, I'm like, man, I don't want to put a rivalry game down as an underrated matchup, just because I feel like every rivalry game's tough, no matter how good or bad they're supposed to be. Like, it's a rivalry game, so it's tough. So I kind of went a little bit different direction. I went at Rutgers, Friday night game. Hopefully we're 3-0 at that
it's
point.
It's not for sure it's a Friday night game, but I think it will be. Yeah,
probably a Friday night game. Hopefully we're 3-0. We beat Penn State, Iowa State. They're probably going to be 3-0. I think they have a joke non-conference. So kind of a sneaky good game, right? To start the Big Ten season. And it's on the road on the East Coast. Like I said, maybe probably a Friday night game. So I think that's something that is underrated and people aren't really paying attention to.
All right, next, what is a must-win game on the schedule, which kind of goes hand in hand with question 4, what was the most important, but you can say who you think.
So here I put Iowa State. For the in-state rivalry alone, it's a must-win. I don't want to hear it's a Cyclone State for the next 365 days, right? So for that alone, it's a must-win. But I truly believe, Colin, because it's the second game of the year and it's on the road and it's Iowa State, this really tells us what type of team I think we're going to have this year. I mean, are we gonna beat this team and we're going to have a ton of momentum going to the rest of the year, or is this one that we're going to drop and it's just going to be kind of that struggle, sort of similar to like last year?
It's been that way for a while. Whenever we lose against Iowa State, we end up. I mean, look at 2022, end up being a really bad year, 7-5. It does. It really 2014. It really does.
And I think it's because we put so much into that game, right? And if you come out victorious, it's hey, we're going this way. But man, if you lose it, it can turn on you. So it's a must win, and I hate this game, and that's why it's like we got to win it, right? Yep. So yeah,
I'm going Rutgers. You just talked about them. To me, it's just because when you look at the schedule, you look at the road games. This is going to be the easiest road game for you, and I have a lot of respect for Greg Schiano. I think he's built a pretty good program at Rutgers, but at the end of the day, let's face it, Iowa is the better team. They're the more talented team. We need to go in there and just take care of business. You lose that game, and it's like, oh boy, we still play a lot of good teams left. You just can't afford to lose that game. You got to go on the road. You got to start Big Ten play because of how tough the Big Ten slate is for you. You can't afford to go 0-1 when you have a lot of good teams remaining. And it's arguably your easiest road game of the season. You just got to take care of business. And that's why, for me, that's a must-win game. You lose that game, especially if we're just talking Iowa State. Like, let's say we lost Iowa State. You're 2-2 going into Indiana. That's not good. Doesn't mean the season's over with at that point, but a lot, the momentum, the confidence, everything is down the drain. So you got to win that game.
Well, and really good points. Like, the easier-ish games are kind of at the beginning of the year, and if
you've got to take care of that,
it's like, last question here, Colin. So Iowa after the bye week, how do you think we do this year? We've got 2 of them, obviously. How do you think we fare this year after the bye weeks?
So we play we play at Wisconsin after a bye, and then Oregon at home. Yep. So it's really tough because you look at Iowa since 2015, we are 5-6 after bye. So not like horrible, but not great either. It will be interesting to see now. And I know first year with Tim Lester, so you can't really count it. But moving forward, how will we utilize the buys? I feel like with Brian Ferentz, we did not. It was just same old, same old. It was like, what did we do during the bye week? Like nothing.
Correct.
Last year we went 1-1 after the bye. I think the bigger trend is looking at the Big Ten big picture. And I actually looked back last year, and Big Ten teams after bye weeks went 17-19. So not very good, actually.
Wow.
But what I thought was interesting was if you played on the road after a bye week, teams were 4-12 last year in the Big Ten. If you played at home, you were 13-7. So, look at that like Oregon game, right? The trend is showing like you're more favorable in that trend because they're going on the road. Plus, you look at the trend of more than 2 time zones away, and then we're at home. Because we're both buys after that, or against Oregon. Oregon has a bye week before us. We have a bye week before them. And so the trend is saying that, we have a little bit better of odds coming off a bye at home versus them coming off a bye on the road. But then that Wisconsin game, though, the trend is not very good. Last year, once again, 4-12 for Big Ten, going on the road after a bye. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be tough. In my opinion, I hope we at least split, right? Yeah. Because that means that you either won at Wisconsin or Oregon. Don't want to go into, obviously. So yeah, we'll just have to be waiting. It's a wait and see game because it really depends on how do we utilize the buys moving forward under Lester. And I just don't think year one counts because, it's year one, still a lot of issues with the offense, things like that. So
right? Just thinking about this literally as you talked about it with that trend, it's like, man, you almost wish in a way, because you're hoping to go 1-1, you almost wish it's like Wisconsin at home because that's more the beatable team,
Yeah,
right? Now it's kind of like a lose-lose where it's like, well, gosh, the better team, it's still you have to play, or the
still.
easier team, you still have to play on the road. So it's
Yep.
that much work or higher chances of maybe going 0-2. But yeah, no, I think the first thing, obviously, it sets up the buys where you talked about earlier, it sets up well kind of where they're
Oh, I love
positioned
it.
at in the
Yeah.
schedule. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big advantage. And then, and just the teams itself, like we kind of already mentioned, like, or I did, it's like, I feel obviously way more confident about trying to get a win against Wisconsin. Oregon, it's like you just want to be competitive. Like I want to be in that game because again, that's a team that this isn't just one of the better Big Ten teams. This is one of the best teams in the country. So year in and year out, one of the top teams of all college football. And if you can show that you're competitive with them, then you can be competitive with literally anyone. And you talked about it. It's like the athletes on Oregon. It's different, right? Than some of these other teams that we've played or haven't played. So being competitive against them, showing that we belong in the same field, I think is important. Kind of like what we always talk about when we play these top teams, and that's what you want.
So yeah, that those are the questions. I think we went through every single team. I think the only team that we didn't really talk about at full length was probably Nebraska. We didn't really, besides when we ranked the rivalry games and stuff. So I guess with Nebraska, yeah, that's going to be a tough game. You got Dylan Raiola back for them in year 2. I thought last year was a little shaky for him, but he was only a freshman and he had good moments. He had bad moments. And, once again, with Matt Rule there, they're always going to be a good team. And so that's going to be an interesting game. But the thing about that game, I always kind of maybe tend to overlook is because it's so far away, right? Like anything can happen. With that being the last game of the season, you just never know with injuries and different things like that. So, but so that will do it for this episode. I think we were able to really dive deep into kind of a lot of the teams with doing it kind of fun, not just going game by game by game. And so
it's a good way to do it.
The goal is hopefully you guys learned a little bit about some of the games that we face, or some of the teams that we face, I should say. And we'll end it there. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Until then, have a good rest of your May and go Hawks.